The heavy stone door slams shut. Elani screams. Her father does not turn around. He keeps walking. He rejoins the party. He drinks the wine. He accepts the congratulations. This is not a kidnapping. This is not a crime scene. This is a wedding. Elani is 16 years old. She is noble. She is wealthy. And she has just been erased. Most history books will tell you about the white marble of Rome. They tell you about the laws and the glory. They lie. They hide the ledger. In this archive, we are opening the file on the ritual Rome tried to burn. We are going to look at the purification. The secret ceremony where the law didn't protect the bride. The law was the one hurting her. The year is 186 BCE. Elani stands in the center of the atrium. She is perfect. Her dress is bright. Her hair is braided with ribbons. She smiles. She has been trained to smile. The guests are loud. They are drunk. They praise her father. They tell him he is generous. They tell him the alliance is strong. The father nods. He smiles back. But his hands are shaking. He looks at his daughter. He sees fear in her eyes. She knows something is wrong. She knows the party is ending too soon. She looks at him for help. A silent question. Don't let them take me. He looks away. He does not answer her. He cannot. If he stops this, he loses everything. He loses his status. He loses his money. He breaks the law. So he lets the guards take her arms. This is the moment the movies cut away. This is the moment the history books skip. They call it tradition. They call it duty, but we will call it what it is. The trap. To understand the horror, you have to look at the paperwork. You have to look at the system. Rome was not built on freedom. It was built on contracts. A marriage in Rome was no romance. It was a transaction. A business deal. You trade land. You trade gold. You trade a daughter. The law had a specific word for this transfer. Manus. The hand. The girl passes from the hand of the father to the hand of the husband. She is property. She is an asset. But the asset has to be clean. The contract has a clause. A hidden clause. Before the husband can take the bride, the gods must take their cut. The Roman religion operated on exchange. Do you want good crops? You kill a goat. You want safety? You pour the wine. You want a marriage? You offer the bride. This is where the deception happens. The party guests think the wedding is over. The prayers were spoken. The omens were good. But the priests are waiting. They are not at the feast. They are underground. Elani is led away from the light. The music fades. The laughter stops. She is not going to her new home. She's not going to her husband's bed. He is forbidden from following her. The law stops him at the door. He knows the rules. He waits outside. Elani walks down. The path leads beneath the temple. The air gets cold. The smell of jasmine and roast meat is gone. It smells of damp stone and old iron. Women surround her. Older women. You might think they are there to protect her. You would be wrong. They are not bodyguards. They are escorts. They are the ones who survived. They grip her arms. They guide her down the steps. They do not speak. Silence is part of the ritual. Elani tries to stop. She digs her sandals into the stone. She looks back one last time. She sees the sliver of light from the street. She hears the distant cheer of the crowd. Then the older woman pulled her forward. They enter the chamber. This is not a holy place. This is a prison cell carved into the rock. Archaeologists found these rooms. They didn't want to believe what they saw. They found stone platforms, shaped like beds. Cold, hard, permanent. They found drains cut into the floor. Drains for liquid. And they found the doors, heavy doors. Thick wood and iron. Doors that lock from the outside. You don't put a lock on the outside of a prayer room. You put a lock on a cage. Elani is pushed inside. The room is dim. The shadows stretch across the walls. She is not alone. The figures in the robes are waiting. They are the guardians of divine will. That is the legal title. It sounds noble. It sounds safe. But look at their faces. There is no mercy there. There is only the ledger. They believe they are owed this. The priests of the Bona Dea. The good goddess. They claim they are here to purify her. They claim she is unclean. For marriage until she passes through this room. They call it purification. The cleansing. It is a lie. It is not a cleansing. It is a toll booth. And the currency is her body. Elani backs away. She hits the wall. She sees something on the stone. Scratches, marks. She looks closer. They are names. Hundreds of them. Julia, Cornelia, Flavia. They are carved deep into the rock. Some are jatted. Some are frantic. These are not prayers. These are records. Her name is a girl who stood exactly where Elani is standing. Her name is a girl who was told to be quiet. Her name is a girl who was erased. The dates next to the names match the wedding days. The system is perfect. The timeline is exact. Elani realizes the truth. This isn't an accident. This isn't a mistake. This is the factory line. She opens her mouth to scream. The older woman steps forward. She places a hand over Elani's mouth. "Do not make a sound," she whispers. "The law forbids it." This is the scariest part of the trap. The silence. It wasn't just social pressure. It was a statute. If Elani speaks about what happens in this room, she commits a crime. She commits impiety. The punishment is exile. The punishment is death. The system has trapped her in a box. If she fights, she dies. If she screams, she is a criminal. She has to submit. That is the only way to survive. The priest steps forward. He holds a tool. Or perhaps it is just his hands. The records are vague on purpose. The history books look away. But the room does not lie. The bed does not lie. Elani squeezes her eyes shut. She thinks of her father. She realizes he knew. He knew about the stone bed. He knew about the lock. He knew about the priest. He paid for the wedding feast while he sent her here. He bought the wine while he sold her safety. Betrayal cuts deeper than any knife. The man who was supposed to protect her handed her over to the wolves. And he called it honor. The heavy door swings. The lock clicks. The light is gone. Elani is alone with the system. And the system is hungry. The door stays locked. Time passes. Outside, the sun sets. The guests at the wedding feast are laughing. They are eating roast pork. They are drinking Falernian wine. They do not ask where the bride is. They know. The groom waits. He is not worried. He is patient. He knows the rules. He cannot touch his new property until the owners are finished with it. This is the cold reality of the Roman system. We need to stop looking at Elani as a person. The law did not see a person. The law saw a package. In Roman law, this transfer had a name. Manus. It literally means the hand. A woman was never free. She was held in her father's arms. Then she was passed to her husband's hand. But hands can drop things. Between the father's hand and the husband's hand, there was a gap. A moment she belonged to no one. This is where priests entered. They claimed that before the transfer could be legal, the package had to be stamped. It had to be purified. The word they used was purificatio. It sounds clean. It sounds holy. But look at the evidence left in the ground. Archaeologists dug beneath the temple of the Bonadi on the Aventine Hill. They expected to find prayer altars. They expected to find statues of the good goddess. They found a crime scene. The chamber was preserved. It survived the fires. It survived the wars. It tells a different story than the books. There were stone platforms. They were shaped like beds. Stone does not offer comfort. Stone offers leverage. There were channels cut into the floor. Channels are for drainage. You drain water. You drain wine. You drain blood. Why does a wedding chapel need a drain? The archaeologists found something else. The heavy doors. They were designed to lock from the outside. This proves intent. If you go to a church to pray, you do not lock the door behind you. You do not trap the worshipper. You only lock the door if the person inside wants to leave. This was not a temple. It was a processing center. The girls were brought here. They were held here, sometimes for hours, sometimes for a full day, and the men who ran it were not rogue criminals. They were officials. They were the guardians of divine will. The law protected them. The Senate protected them. If a father tried to kick down that door, he was attacking the gods. He was attacking Rome itself. So the fathers stayed in the banquet hall. They poured another drink. They waited for their daughters to be returned, and when the door finally opened, the girl did not run out. She walked out. She was silent. She was pale. She was immediately covered. Roman custom dictated that the bride must wear a veil. The flammeum, it was thick. It was bright orange or yellow. Historians told us for centuries that this veil was for modesty. They said it was to show her virtue. That is a lie. We found the medical texts. We found the doctor's notes. A physician named Soranus wrote in the 2nd century. He was honest. He advised that the veil served a double purpose. It preserved modesty, yes, but it also prevented the husband from seeing the signs of trauma, signs of struggle, bruises on the arms, marks on the neck, tears. The veil was no badge of honor. It was a cover-up. It allowed the husband to pretend nothing happened. He could look at the bright orange cloth and ignore the shaking girl underneath it. This was the deal. The husband gets a wife. The priests get their portion. The father gets his alliance, and the girl gets the silence, because she could not speak. This is the part that makes the blood run cold. You might ask, why didn't they tell? Why didn't Elani run to the forum and scream? Why didn't the mothers warn the daughters? They tried, but the system was one step ahead. The Roman legal code had a weapon called the Lex Voconia. Passed in 169 BCE, it contained statutes about religious disclosure. It classified these rites as mysteria, secret acts. If a woman revealed what happened in the chamber, she wasn't a whistleblower. She was a blasphemer. The charge was impiety. The punishment was exile, property seizure, or death. The law was brilliant. It turned the victim into a criminal. If Elani speaks, she destroys her family. She loses her home. She is cast out of Rome, so she swallows the scream. She fixes her veil. She walks to her husband. She performs the role. But the truth has a way of leaking. Men knew. The writers knew. They couldn't say it directly. The censors would catch them. So they hid the truth in plays. They hid it in poetry. Playwright Plautus tried to warn us. He wrote a comedy, but the joke was dark. One character says, "The gods take their portion before any man." Another asks what the bride gets in return. The answer, purification, if she survives it. That line was cut from later copies. Someone erased it, but fragments survived. The philosopher Lucretius was even bolder. He hated the system. He saw the hypocrisy. He wrote, "They call these rites sacred, but they are terror." He said the priests were thieves. He said the law protects theft. He shouted it from the pages of his books. But Rome didn't listen. Rome didn't care. The machine was too profitable. The tradition was too old. The fathers kept signing the contracts. The priests kept opening the doors. And the girls disappeared into the dark. Elani is back in the light now. The ritual is over. She stands next to her new husband. The guests cheer. They throw nuts and flowers. She does not flinch. She is purified. But she is not the same person who walked in. That girl is gone. She was left on the stone bed. The woman standing here now is a survivor, and she has a secret. She saw the names on the wall. She saw the dates, and she knows she is not alone. She is part of an army of silent women, and one day, the silence will break. But first, we have to look at the breaking point. We have to look at the moment the system became too greedy, the moment the screams got too loud for the veil to hide. The year is 186 BCE. The system blinks. For centuries, the machine worked perfectly. The fathers signed. The priests took. The daughters vanished. But in NT6 BCE, the silence broke. A woman named Hispola Facinia entered the consul's office. She did the unthinkable. She spoke. She described the bacchanalia. These were secret rites, underground chambers, men and women mixing in the dark. Sexual violence disguised as worship. She told the consul about the screaming. She told him about the oaths of silence. Rome panicked. The Senate didn't just listen. They exploded. They launched investigations. They arrested priests. They executed leaders. Thousands were punished. The Senate said these secret rites were cancer. They called them foreign corruptions. They wanted to burn the bacchanalia to the ground. And in that chaos, a door opened. Other women were watching. Women like Elani. Women who had been through the purification. They saw the Senate arresting priests for sexual abuse. They saw the law punishing secret rituals. They thought the rules had changed. They thought, if they are arresting those priests, surely they will arrest ours. They were wrong. This is the moment the mask falls off the villain. Several women came forward. They attempted to testify. They didn't talk about the foreign bacchanalia. They talked about Roman weddings. They talked about the Bonadi. They talked about the stone beds beneath the temples on the Aventine. They tried to show the Senate the scars. The Senate refused to look. The consul Spurius Postumius dismissed them. He didn't deny the violence. He didn't say they were lying. He made a distinction defining every corrupt system in history. He said, "Bacchanalia is foreign corruption. The rites of Bonadia are a Roman tradition." Then he delivered the final blow. "We do not investigate tradition." Read that again. If a foreigner hurts a woman in a cave, it is a crime. It is punishable by death. If a Roman priest hurts a woman in a temple, it is tradition. It is protected by law. The women were stunned. They were warned. Be silent, or face the charge of impiety. Most have returned to the shadows. They had families. They had children to protect. They complied. One did not. Her name was erased from the official records. We don't know who her father was. We don't know who her husband was. But we know what she did. She walked into the Roman Forum, the center of political power. She stood before the crowds. She didn't whisper. She shouted. She described exactly what happened to her beneath the temple. She named the acts. She named the priests. She broke the Lex Voconia. It was a suicide mission. She wasn't on the podium for long. The guards grabbed her. They dragged her down. She was arrested within hours. The charge was double impiety and public obscenity. They didn't execute her publicly. That would make her a martyr. They did something worse. They exiled her. They sent her to Sicily. They forbade her from ever returning to Rome. They forbade her from speaking to a Roman citizen again. They isolated her. They silenced her. They waited for her to die. And they scrubbed her name from the books. The system won. The wedding investigation was closed. The stone doors were locked again. The business continued, but you cannot erase everything. You can burn the scrolls. You can exile the women. But the stone remembers. In 1964, archaeologists were digging near the Roman Forum. They found a piece of graffiti carved into a wall. It wasn't a formal inscription. It was scratched in haste. It was hidden. The lettering style dates it to approximately 180 BCE. This is years after the scandal. Just a few years after the unknown woman was dragged away. The message is short. It is brutal. It reads, "Tradition is what monsters call their crimes when no one stops them." Someone carved that. Someone stood in the shadow of the Senate House, risking death, and cut those letters into the rock. Maybe it was a friend of the exiled woman. Maybe it was a sister. Maybe it was a dad finally waking up. We don't know the author, but we know the truth. That sentence destroys the excuse of ancient history. People then knew it was wrong. They knew tradition was a lie. They just couldn't stop it, but something shifted after that graffiti was carved. The ritual didn't end. But the elite families, they started to get nervous. They saw the Bacchanalia burn. They saw the near miss with the scandal. They realized the purification was a liability. If the poor started rioting, if the secrets kept leaking, the whole system might collapse. So the rich did what the rich always do. They bought their way out. By the late 1st century BCE, the ledger changed. Wealthy fathers began to pay substitution fees. Instead of sending their daughter to the chamber, they sent gold. They paid for symbolic ceremonies. The priest would wave a branch. He would say a prayer. The daughter would stay light. She would stay untouched. The priests accepted the money. Of course they did. This proves it was never about the gods. It was never about divine will. It was about power. And money is power. If you could afford the fee, your daughter was safe. If you couldn't, the satirist Juvenal wrote about this in 100 CE. He looked at the city and he saw two different worlds. He wrote, "The poor still offer their daughters to the old gods. The rich offer gold instead." The horror didn't stop. It just became exclusive to the poor. The elite families protected their own. They let the daughters of cobblers and bakers go down in the dark. They called it upholding tradition, while they wrote checks to avoid it. This is the final ugly truth of Roman marriage. It didn't end in moral awakening. It ended because the people in charge decided they didn't want their families to bleed anymore, as long as the consequences fell on other people's daughters. The practice was defended. The moment it threatened the Senate floor, it became negotiable. The stone beds remained, the drains remained, but the names on the wall changed. They became the forgotten names. Until now, stand in the Roman Forum now. Tourists are everywhere. They are eating gelato. They are taking selfies. They are smiling at the broken columns. They think they are looking at the ruins of a great civilization. They think they are looking at the birthplace of law. They are wrong. They are standing on top of a crime scene. Beneath the stone, the chambers are still there. The drains are still there. The heavy doors are gone, but the hinges remain. For 2,000 years, the world walked over these rooms and said nothing. This is the final act of the cover-up. The historians. You might think modern scholars would debunk this. You might think they would want to know the truth. But for centuries, they looked away. They found the inscriptions. They found the legal references to purification. They found the plays that called it terror. And they ignored it. They called the evidence fragmentary. They said the ancient sources were unreliable. They used big words to hide the ugly truth. They suggested it was exaggeration or metaphor. Why? Because admitting this destroys the fantasy. We like to think of Rome as the hero of history. We like the white marble. We like the order. If you admit that Roman marriage, the foundation of Western family law, was built on a system of religious assault, the hero dies. It means the civilized world was built on the backs of screaming girls in locked rooms. So the scholars protected the reputation of dead men. They chose statues over victims. They became part of the silence protocol. But in the last few decades, the wall cracked. The evidence became too loud to ignore. Archaeology does not lie. It does not have an agenda. It just exists. In 2018, the denial finally broke. A research team affiliated with the American Academy in Rome published a review. They looked at everything. The laws, the ruins, the graffiti. They didn't use euphemisms. They didn't use soft language. Their conclusion was a verdict. They said the evidence strongly suggests these rituals involved coercive sexual acts. They said it was done under religious authority. They stated it was protected by legal structures that prevented resistance. That is academic language for a factory of abuse. They finally admitted it. This happened. It wasn't a myth. It wasn't a metaphor. It was a Tuesday in Rome. And now we have to look at the only thing that matters. The names. Go back to the chamber beneath the temple. Shine a light on the wall. The names are still there. Julia, Cornelia, Flavia, Fulvia. These were not rebels. These were not warriors. They were terrified teenagers. They couldn't burn the temple. They couldn't kill the priests. They couldn't stop the wedding. So they did the only thing a human being can do when the system erases them. They left a mark. They carved their names in stone. Some carvings are deep. Some are barely scratches. Some are cut over other names because there was no space left. They didn't write hate messages. They didn't write manifestos. They just wrote their names. It was a proof of existence. It was a message to the future. I was here. This happened to me. I am real. They left those words in the dark. They trusted that someday someone would come with a light. They trusted that someone would stop listening to the senators and start looking at the walls. We are that light. We found them. We see the names. We see the dates. We see the crime. Rome tried to bury them. The law tried to silence them. The historians tried to ignore them. They failed. The Colosseum is falling apart. The Senate is dust. The Empire is dead. But the names on the wall are still screaming. And this brings us to the final, chilling realization. The Roman ritual is gone. We don't send brides into caves anymore, but don't get comfortable. The machinery behind it didn't disappear. It just changed its shape. Think about the trap components. Authority disguised as holiness, violence reframed as duty, silence enforced by law. Those three things didn't die with Rome. They are the building blocks of every abusive system today. The tradition excuse is still used. The secret file is still used. The non-disclosure agreement is just the modern version of the Lex Voconia. Rome was just the prototype. Before you click away, ask yourself one question. How many other traditions that we call sacred are just systems of control? How many names are currently being carved into walls that we haven't found yet? The women in the cellar were waiting for acknowledgement. They waited 2,000 years. Now we know. Her name was Alani. Her name was Julia. Her name was erased. And now you are the only one who knows it. Do not let them be erased again.